Welcome back to the story of liberty. This is John Bona. I trust that there are still good solutions for the huge problems that we have in America with unemployment, the debt, deficits, wasteful spending, bogus programs, and most recently, the liberal media's attempt to take away our children.
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
Some solutions are not profound, but they still work. See, it's not a federal government solution to the problem either. The top-down solutions very seldom work. We have seen in the past that government intervention does not work. It just makes the government bigger. It adds more burden on the backs of the working people. It adds more regulation and taxes. The Constitution of the United States does not permit the spending that we're doing, especially for transfer payments. We all know that we're spending trillions of dollars for things that really fall under the improper function of government, and all the bogus programs under the improper function of government, all funded by your tax dollars. It's estimated that today, unfortunately, 1 in 5 kids live in poverty. And many in the Democratic-controlled cities, it's at its worst. The social justice spewed by the liberal media most recently is outrageous. I need to say something about this. They are saying that your children are not your kids. They don't belong to you. They belong to the community. Did you hear that?
So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities.
Scripture says just the opposite. It says that parents are to train their children in the way they should go, and then when they grow up, they will not depart from it. The Bible talks over and over about parents raising their children. It's the parents' responsibility, not the community or the government. Yes, certainly as local communities, we want to help people in our neighborhoods that need help, but not the federal government, as the liberals are now demanding. To turn our children over to them.
Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
See, local communities can still show compassion, and they should help those in need. But children belong to the parents. This bad idea on the table right now from MSNBC, that children belong to the community, is what China did and still does to many of their children. See, in China, they take the children from the family at the age of 3. The children are then indoctrinated into the government system. It's terrible. Melissa Harris Perry with MSNBC stated this statement, and it's unbelievable. We have to break through the private idea that kids belong to their parents. We have to recognize the collective idea that kids belong to the community. Do you know what Adolf Hitler said? Listen what Adolf Hitler said. He said, when an opponent says, I will not come over to your side, I calmly say, your child belongs to us already. What are you? You will pass on. Your descendants now stand in this new camp. In a short time, they will know nothing else but this new community. Did you hear that? Adolf Hitler said further, this new Reich will give its youth to no one. but itself will take youth and give to youth its own education and its own upbringing. Do you see the obvious parallels here between the liberal media in America and what they are demanding, and what Nazi Germany did? What Adolf Hitler actually did to the youth in Germany?
So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families, and recognize that kids belong to whole communities.
It's identical. It's an identical approach. MSNBC is saying your children don't belong to you. They don't belong to the parents. Your children belong to the community. This is sick. This is evil. It's outrageous and totally wrong. And so we see our benevolent government making trillions of dollars in transfer payments, redistribute your income to someone else. See, they do this to grasp more power and control. The government is not benevolent.
Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
See, welfare payments, they keep families in bondage, never teaching them how to catch a fish, but giving them a fish for a free lunch. These welfare payments just keep families in bondage for decades. They steal any opportunity for that family to succeed. See, that's what MSNBC really wants to escalate further, even more. Total control of families in America. See, before the government or anyone can answer the question, how do we help the poor? How do we reduce poverty? Helping those in need. We need to realize that the government programs are not working. And a new government solution like taking your children is not going to work either. In fact, the government programs very seldom work. If you look up in Northern Virginia and parts around DC, the 2 and 3 bedroom communities are doing very well. That's where a lot of the money is going, to federal employees.
Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
Well, the facts are obvious. There are more people on food stamps, almost 50 million people in America on food stamps. More people out of work, huge deficits, mounting debt. It's a prescription for a coming economic earthquake. So, we know the problems. How do we fix it? How do we fix the problem? You know, it's still good that most Americans want to help people that are really in need. But not wasting money on programs not permitted under the Constitution or that don't work. And the government does a lousy job of creating jobs. Let's face it. According to a study, the government could spend as much as 10 times to create a job as the private sector. The government cannot give anybody anything that the government does not first take from somebody else, because it has nothing of its own. What it has is simply taking from the private sector, from the workers, the investors. You know, on the spending side, well, we all know the federal government is extraordinarily wasteful. And they have a vast array of programs to provide direct transfer payments, welfare, as its primary vehicle to reduce poverty.
Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
In 2004, transfer programs such as Social Security, temporary assistance for needy families, food stamps, Medicare, disability payments amounted to more than $1.25 trillion. Friends, we need to face the music. America is now in new territory. No one has ever been there before. Now, we all want to help people. As Christians, of course we do. But we all know from history that governments eventually run out of money. That is inevitable. And the people most dependent on the government get hurt the most vulnerable. But okay, here's the solution. We need, as a people, we the people of this nation, need to move away from government dependency. We need to stop the wasteful spending that is driving our country on a downward spiral. And so how do we do that? How do families who have been on dependency from the government for generations become free from the government that is actually keeping them in bondage? Keeping them from being creative, to start a business, hire people, from achieving economic liberty, the liberty needed to economic success, and away from government dependency. Well, the first thing we need to remember, and let me say, we need to help people that are really in need. We continue to help the needy, but we don't look at the federal government to do this. That needs to be phased out. We, the people in our own neighborhoods, need to reach out to those in need of assistance, the person down the road that may need help. We give to our local churches and the good ministries that help people in our communities, that help the poor and the needy. It's called the army of compassion, the army of Christians ready, willing, and able to help those in need, not the federal government. There's a big difference. The deal that the government and the liberal media is now offering on the table is outrageous. They now demand our children in exchange for the crumbs they drop from their coffers.
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
The tyrant Stalin, he knew this concept well. He publicly told a general and several people in the room once that in his country, that starving his people is like starving a chicken. It's the same principle. Because even if you pluck the chicken, it'll come back to eat from your hand while it's starving. And so it is with people, said the ruthless tyrant Stalin. You know, there are different estimates how many churches in America we have. Somewhere around 450,000 churches, not including the many home churches, thousands of ministries right around the corner, ready, willing, and able to help. So here at the Story of Liberty, we're calling on the Army of Compassion. We're calling on the churches and the ministries throughout America. We're calling upon you to help your neighbor, to love your neighbor as yourself. And here's where it all begins, in your neighborhood, at your local church. There is no other way to solve these problems. Dependency on the federal government will ultimately fail and cause severe damage to economic liberty that the people of America are entitled to. Today, well, it's our turn. We are living now. The torch of the flame of liberty, it rests in our hands. We are in fact recording our eternal record, for which we will give, all of us, an account before God. It's time to send a message to America that liberty is not just for the writers or the speakers or even the great documents it's written upon. Liberty is God's idea. Christ came to set the captives free. Liberty is our home, our families, our children, our grandchildren, our business, our jobs, our faith in Christ. Liberty is our lives. We need to defend it. It's not only our duty to defend it, it's our God-given right. Friends, we can make America good again. People made it what it is, and we could make it what it ought to be. Christians believe that. And so that if it does happen that your children or grandchildren ask one day, where were you when America was losing its freedom? What were you doing? What were you doing when America became a godless nation and turned its back on God? What did you do to stop that? I believe you will have a good answer. I know millions of parents across America would like to say to these liberals who want to take their children, stay away. Don't come near our children. You're not welcome. Back off. Millions of parents want to say, my children are being trained and mentored by us, the parents. My children's minds, their hearts, are dedicated to their families. They're delicate. Stay away. You don't have permission from us, the parents, to pollute them with your socialistic, anti-God agenda. May our children, may our grandchildren record that when all seem lost, their parents, their grandparents, they gave their all for the gospel of liberty and for the glory of God.